Okay, so the main thing I want to talk about in this video is that the Superbug is now officially in the White House. Now, what we know so far is that Vice President Pence, his press secretary, has tested positive for the virus, and she was actually noted to be symptomatic while she was on site. So that these people get tested every day, and she didn't test positive until she was symptomatic. Now we know that this thing is contagious even during the pre-symptomatic period. So it's very likely, and I would say it's almost an absolute guarantee, that this person who was the closest person to Pence in the White House is likely going to have given him the virus. Now, the possibility of this is magnified because Pence and other higher-ranking officials within the White House never wear personal protective equipment. But of course, now with this recent scare, they're going to be changing that approach and encouraging many people who work around the administration to wear that sort of personal protective equipment. Now, we also know that one of Trump's valets, these people are military and they serve the president food and drinks, of all things. Probably the worst possible position you could have for a person to catch the virus is somebody who is serving the president drink. So this guy is serving the president drinks and food, and he doesn't have personal protective equipment. And so that's two people now who've tested positive within the White House. So you know what that means. That where there's smoke, there's fire. There's going to be a lot more coming in the coming week, and I would not be surprised if we get the big news that either the vice president or the president himself have become stricken with this. Now, if there's anything that would be a linchpin on the economy right now and thrust the country into potential civil disarray, is for one of those two to come out and say they have the virus, and for one of them to get very ill with the virus. Because remember, Trump is pushing 73. He's in the high-risk group. Pence is only 60, but remember, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, he was only 55, and I believe that he was in the ICU. I don't think he was on a ventilator, but he was in intensive care. Obviously, there's an element of preferential treatment there, which is understandable. I mean, you want the leader of your country to have all the support that they can get so they can continue to do their job. Now remember, before Boris came down with this, there was talk of opening London up to do the whole herd immunity thing. And then, of course, right after that, they went into a full-scale lockdown, which they're still in today, and probably justified considering they have one of the highest fatality rates of any country. So if some higher-ranking officials do come down with this, we may start to see the strategy change once again. And of course, that will have dire economic consequences, but I can't see Trump ever giving in, even if he's on his deathbed. It's more likely that they will stay the course till the bitter end. Now, I think it's very unfortunate that this has become such a politically divisive issue. Unfortunately, when one side pushes, the other side pushes back, and then we find ourselves right back into the left-right dialectic. But there was no reason that this ever had to be a political issue, and it started to be one when the pressure was put on Trump for his alleged mishandling of the outbreak. I'm just here to say that with all we know about how contagious this virus is, if anybody should be in quarantine right now, it is half the White House who has come into contact with these individuals and the president himself. If Trump gets this, and if he gets it in a bad way, the shit is gonna hit the fan. So this could potentially go a couple ways, because I think somebody, some big name is gonna come down with this virus, or you're just not gonna see Pence for a few weeks, and everybody's gonna wonder where he is, or he's gonna be doing remote broadcasts, because even Trump said, I think he's on, and this is a quote, I think he's currently on an airplane going to a faraway place. That is literally what he said.
So Mike knows about it, and Mike has done what he has to do. I think he is on an airplane going to some faraway place.
So why would he need to do that afterwards? It wouldn't make a difference if he already had contact with this person. He could self-isolate somewhere. Now, maybe this is some kind of security protocol. They're taking him to a bunker somewhere to see if he develops symptoms and gets sick. But this can go one of two ways. They can both beat the virus and they can brag about how they beat the virus and how it wasn't a big deal. And that, of course, may cause the artificially inseminated stock market rally that's currently happening to actually go up after, of course, it takes a nosedive on the news that one of them has it. But if they beat it, that in itself can be a stimulus to the economy. But the initial shock of it is not going to bode well for the economy in the short term if they hear that the president has become stricken with the coronavirus, because then there's the prospect that he might not make it and who might take his place, and the market loses the Trump effect and everything settles down in the gutter. But the question will, of course, be, will he admit it? Because there's a lot at stake for them to admit it if they do come down with this illness, because you know that the media is never going to let the administration live that one down. The markets right now are just waiting for one pivotal piece of bad news to set everything right where it's supposed to be. And where it's supposed to be certainly isn't where it is right now, if these jobless numbers are any indication. It's all about production and consumption. If people aren't producing and consuming, then this market paradigm does not work. As I said in my recent video, the situation right now is analogous to a person who has broken their bones and they got hooked on painkillers. The bone hasn't healed, but just like the Fed is flooding the markets with money right now, we are flooding this person with painkillers. And when the painkillers finally do run out, there's going to be a world of pain to endure when we realize that nothing has actually healed yet. Remember, at the beginning of last year, the debt was $16.5 trillion in the United States, and I think it's already crossed the $25 trillion mark. Now, that's money that absolutely needs to be paid back at some point down the road. And what that means is that there's going to be spending cuts, and the government is going to have to increase its revenue. And it's going to do that by raising taxes and cutting spending for various programs. They've already started by cutting the World Health Organization funding. And this, of course, is going to lead to civil unrest because they're not going to be able to sustain this basic income. And by the time they can't, everybody is going to be used to it and they're going to feel entitled to it. And they're going to be very pissed off if they don't keep getting it. And that is going to lead to a lot of conflict leading up to the presidential election. So I think the next black swan within the larger black swan event that we're currently in is going to be either the vice president or the president coming down with the superbug, possibly getting quite ill, and that is going to have a very devastating effect in the markets. Not just my prediction, because remember, this thing is very, very contagious. And if it's already that close, if it was that close to them, and these are people who are already symptomatic, and having this close proximity to the top brass of the U.S. government, then you can bet that one of them has it or that more people around them will have it. Just because you have rapid, on-the-spot, 100% accurate testing, I don't know if the latter statement is true, but just because you have rapid testing and you're being tested all the time, that's not an immunization against catching the virus. That just means that, yeah, once you finally do start showing symptoms or you have enough of a viral load that it can be detected by the test, then you're going to test positive. But for all we know, everyone there in the White House could already have it, and they're just either pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, and they just haven't tested positive yet. It's likely that if there is a special treatment out of there, you can bet your bottom dollar that the top brass in the U.S. executive branch is going to be first in line for that. This is all coming at a time where you have the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones enjoying this phony bullish market, which is what it is. Do not be deceived into believing that the market is doing well. There are now 34 million jobs that have been lost. This is just in the United States. People are lining up around the country for food banks. There's going to be meat shortages in the near future. There's a new study that indicates up to half of small businesses can close in the next 6 months. Here's what kind of worries me about the situation. Because of all of this pressure on the presidency, and because there's clearly a political divide between whether or not we should reopen, will the White House be transparent when other people start becoming stricken with this? Now, Obviously, it's not like China where they can cover things up as easily, but it also makes me wonder whether or not the suspension of the daily press conferences has something to do with this. The reason why it's so tragic is because of the political divisiveness. There was no PPE being worn in the press conferences in the White House, and the reason for that is that they did not want to perpetuate the idea that this was serious, which was, of course, strictly a political play. Now, of course, they're wanting all of the accessory staff within the White House, and I'm presuming possibly even the president and his henchmen themselves to actually wear personal protective equipment. They didn't want to do this before because they didn't want to scare the public. And if you have a base of people who is out there protesting and saying, you know, it's safe to go back to work and not social distancing, then you're not going to want to wear a mask to scare them into believing that this is actually something serious, when we know that it is potentially serious. There's just a lot of things we don't know about this virus. It's much too soon, in my opinion, for people to get really complacent about this. Remember, SARS had a death rate of 9%. This is in the same family of viruses. We are but one mutation away from this getting really, really ugly, and nobody knows how it's going to go. There is a broad range of predictions from this is going to fizzle out to this is going to mutate and mutate and mutate for years and decades to come. The Federal Reserve has went to unprecedented lengths to keep the economy propped up without contest from almost anybody. And right now they are tasked with doing whatever they can to keep the panic at bay and make everything seem like business as usual. In spite of the fact that the test positivity ratio hasn't changed, you're still getting the same amount of people across the board testing every day in the United States. That's between 25 and 30,000. It has started to edge down marginally, but once these new lockdown measures are relaxed, we're going to see in the next couple of weeks when those numbers start to trend upwards again. It's just likely going to be a reality that we have to face. So I would not have a high confidence level that this administration, or any administration for that matter, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, a Republican, an NDP, a Liberal, a Bloc Québécois, none of them are going to tell you how bad it really is. You will always get the euphemistic version of what's going on from your leaders, because their primary role is to maintain crowd control till the bitter end. Now, I'm interested to know from you guys, if some high-ranking person in the executive branch of the U.S. government comes down with this, how do you think the people are going to respond? How do you think the markets will respond? Here in Canada, people responded by acquiescing to lockdown policies with relative ease when we were told that Justin Trudeau's wife came down with this. And of course, Trudeau loves this situation because he gets to do a well-rehearsed monologue without any objection or interference from other politicians who might disagree with what he's saying every single day, and we have to listen to it. Ugh. Anyways, tomorrow I have another topic of interest to my Canadian viewers. Most of you probably can anticipate what it's going to be about. It's about the loss of some personal rights and freedoms and liberties, not particularly related to this particular issue that we're talking about here today, but an important one nonetheless, and one that I've been an advocate from on this channel since day one. So stay tuned for that. Let me know what you think is going to come of this, if Trump gets this or Pence gets this, in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com. Your one-stop shop for premium, high-quality, brand-name products that have been tried and tested by myself and other YouTube gear reviewers. My subscribers save 10% off by using the coupon code SURVIVALPREPPER. All one word in all caps.